Stroke risk estimation, not prediction, using stochastic method, number 1537, VPT 090, February 16, 2026. Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category Stroke. Preface: my way of thinking does not come from a single academic major. It comes from the combined academic training of mathematics, computer science, physics, mechanical, and structural engineering, together with self-taught electronics engineering, psychology, physiology, and pathology. Mathematics taught me abstraction and invariance. Physics taught me first principles and the relationship between energy, time, and geometry. Engineering taught me failure mechanisms, load, stress, deformation, strain, and accumulated damage. These disciplines formed one unified cognitive system that I have used throughout my life. Because of this foundation, I don't see problems as belonging to a specific academic field. I see systems and patterns, whether the material is ocean, land, or aerospace structures, transistors and wires of semiconductor chip layouts, neurons and neural pathways of the brain, artificial intelligence algorithms, or the human vascular and metabolic network. I analyze the same core relationships, input and output, stress and strain, trajectory and instability, accumulation and failure. The material changes, but the governing logic does not. This is why I did not formally study electronic engineering. Yet I was able to develop AI software algorithms for semiconductor chip design and build a top-ranked semiconductor chip design company in Silicon Valley. That work did not come from following a standard academic path from BS to PhD, from an isolated academic major to a specific industrial application. It came from pattern recognition that connects mathematical, physical, and medical abstraction to the real world. I applied the same pattern cognition framework to different material systems in the real world. Today, I am doing the same thing in medicine. My medical research is not the result of changing careers. It is the continuation of the same way of thinking applied to a living biomedical system. I entered the medical research field not for prestige, fame, or money, but because I needed to save my own life without depending on others. When I look at glucose, blood pressure, vascular stiffness, heart attacks, kidney failure, aging, or stroke risk, I do not see isolated laboratory values. I see energy flow, structural deformation over time, stability margins, and failure thresholds. I see a movie with a trajectory, not a snapshot from a single lab test report. Most professional training encourages depth within a fixed boundary. That path produces important work, but it can also lead to repetition inside a closed system. This is what I mean by a silo. My path has been different because my thinking was built on first principles, tested in large-scale and diverse industrial applications, and later driven by the necessity of survival when I faced multiple chronic diseases and mortality threats, including a recent hemorrhagic stroke near the Pontine region with a very high mortality rate. My body became the most important system and the only laboratory I have used and analyzed for my diseases, health, and survival, while I conducted engineering tests in other laboratories to meet my job requirements. That urgency forced the full integration of everything I had learned over 6 decades, whether from professors, companies, colleagues, competitors, friends, or other suffering patients. Most importantly, I learned from my own pain, fear, and suffering, and from the eyes of my wife and children when I faced 9 mortality events. Therefore, what I am doing is not simply applying engineering to medicine. I am using one math-physical framework to study different systems, including medicine. This approach allows me to see structure where others see tables of numbers, to see a movie instead of a single frame of photo, and to recognize patterns that are invisible in static analysis. I do not write these papers to demonstrate academic credentials. I write them to make this way of seeing understandable and useful for other patients and for their families and loved ones. If we can understand disease as a process of energy accumulation, structural adaptation, and eventual instability, then we can intervene early in healthy lifestyle habits, reduce the metabolic load, slow the structural deformation of mortality disease, and avoid catastrophic failure such as paralysis or death. This article is another step in that lifelong effort to use one consistent way of thinking to understand different forms of reality and to turn that understanding into practical help for others. In other words, this paper applies this unified framework to the stochastic estimation of stroke risk. Introduction. After my stroke on June 21, 2025, medically termed a cerebrovascular accident, I continuously focused on understanding this event more deeply. I asked myself two direct questions. Why did I not see it coming? How could I have reduced its likelihood? I am not a fortune teller who predicts exact dates or specific events. However, as a scientist, I should be able to estimate structural vulnerability, probability trends, and relative risk levels, even if I cannot determine the precise timing of brain vessel rupture or blockage. This article represents a step in that direction. It explores stroke risk using structured scientific modeling rather than speculative prediction. It is well known that poor lifestyle habits, including an unhealthy diet, lack of exercise, insufficient sleep, and chronic stress, increase the risk of metabolic disorders such as obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and dyslipidemia. If these metabolic conditions are not well controlled, the risk of major mortality diseases rises, including heart attacks, kidney failure, stroke, dementia, and cancer. In real life, a patient must monitor many biomarkers, including weight, FPG, PPG, HbA1c, SBP, DBP, heart rate, LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. Beyond these standard biomarkers, some extended biomarkers provide deeper structural insight. Pulse pressure, PP equals SBPMI in USDBP, reflects arterial stiffness. Mean arterial pressure, MAP equals DBP plus BP divided by 3. Represents the average pressure exerted on the blood vessels that drives blood flow to the organs. PP and MAP are particularly relevant for stroke because they indicate vessel stiffness and continuous pressure from circulating blood that supplies glucose, oxygen, and nutrients to brain cells and other organ cells. Based on these measurable and calculated variables, I developed two extended equations to examine my stroke risk in prior years, at present, and to guide future prevention. Total severe risk equals base severe risk asterisk trigger sensitivity index, or TSI trigger sensitivity index. TSI equals PP 45 asterisk SBP 120 base severe risk equals FPG 90 asterisk 0.3 plus PP 45 asterisk 0.2 plus MAP 85 asterisk 0. 1 plus real age over 67 asterisk 0. For the normalization factors are selected based on general references and my personal health baseline. Stochastic Research Method STM. This study extends the previous VMT energy analysis and TDA geometric trajectory so that stroke risk in this study is expressed as a range instead of a single number. The purpose is not to predict the exact time of a stroke, but to estimate how likely it is that the brain blood vessel system has already entered an unstable condition. In the earlier to deterministic analyses using viscoplastic energy and topological geometry, each year had one calculated trigger sensitivity index TSI. In real physiology, the condition never stays at one exact number. It moves slightly up and down over time. For this reason, each calculatetsi is treated as the center of a narrow natural fluctuation band. The instability boundary is TSI equals 1.0. Stroke risk is determined by how much of this band lies above that level. The larger the portion above the boundary, the higher the likelihood that the vascular system is already in an unstable state. For my case, the TSI data over the 13-year period can be ranked according to their stability status using the instability boundary of 1.0, TSI ranking and stability status. Instability boundary equals 1.0. Rank here TSI state 120 to 4 109 and stable to 2023 1.05 and stable 3 2025 1.05 and stable for 2019 1.0 transition 520 to 0.98 stable 6 2020 0.96 stable 7 2014 0.95 stable 820 to 6 0.95 stable 920 to 109 for stable 102 to 15 0.83 stable 11 to 18083 stable 1 to 217081 stable 13 to 160 0.79 stable. This probabilistic result does not represent the chance that a stroke will occur on a specific day, month, or year. Stroke is a sudden event, but structural instability develops slowly over time. The model therefore measures how likely the system is to already be in an unstable condition. The key idea in stochastic probability is to express the result as a range rather than as a single fixed value or a specific date. STM analysis results. The stochastic method is applied to the same 13 years period 2014 to 2026 longitudinal dataset that was previously examined using both viscoplastic energy VMT and topology geometry TDA methods. Instead of treating each annual TSI as a fixed point, the stochastic method interprets it as the center of a narrow natural fluctuation band. Stroke risk becomes the portion of this band that lies above the instability boundary at TSI equals 1.0. The first layer of the dataset represents the physiological drivers FPG, PP, and MAP. Their normalized 13-year averages are FPG equals 1.17, PP equals 1.0, and MAP equals 0.98. The correlations with the CVA risk proxy reveal the mechanical hierarchy. Correlations: PP equals 88%, MAP equals 61%, FPG equals -57%. Pulse pressure: PP is the dominant cyclic load acting on the vessel wall for a stroke event. Mean arterial pressure: MAP provides the background structural stress, fasting plasma glucose. FPG moves in the opposite direction, reflecting long-term metabolic improvement that pulls the system back towards stability. The second layer introduces real age-based stroke risk and TSI correlations. TSI equals 98%, real age equals 61%, base stroke risk equals 10%. Chronological aging alone does not drive the transition into instability. Growing older increases stroke risk, but it does not guarantee that a stroke will occur. Aging provides the slow accumulation of damage, but the actual shift from stable to unstable is controlled by the hemodynamic trigger load expressed through TSI. When the yearly TSI values are interpreted as moving bands rather than isolated points, a continuous risk envelope appears. The period from 2016 to 2018 remains predominantly stable. In 2019, the envelope crosses into instability. A partial recovery is seen from 2020 to 2022, followed by a return to the unstable region during 2023 to 2025. In 2026, even though only partial year data are available, the center-off band moves back below the boundary to TSI equals 0.95, indicating real structural improvement but continued sensitivity to large pressure spikes. Seen from this perspective, the stochastic result does not introduce a new disease mechanism. VMT measures cumulative energy and irreversible deformation. TDA reveals the geometric trajectory. STM shows how frequently the system resides in the unstable region. Same data, same trajectory, same instability threshold. A full equation-based stochastic calculation is not required here because the purpose of this paper is methodological convergence, not event prediction. Conclusion: this study shows that 3 different methods applied to the same longitudinal dataset lead to the same structural interpretation of stroke risk. VMT describes cumulative energy and irreversible vascular change. TDA reveals the geometric trajectory of progression. STM expresses the result as a probability range rather than a single fixed value. 3 methods and dataset. 1. Conclusion: chronological aging provides the time-dependent accumulation of damage, but it does not by itself trigger instability. The transition from stable to unstable is governed primarily by the hemodynamic load represented by the trigger sensitivity index TSI. Stroke is therefore not a random sudden event, but the outcome of long-term structural deterioration combined with a triggering condition. The stochastic framework confirms this same mechanism in probability form and strengthens the unified physical and clinical meaning of the model. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.